Happy Halloween, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 43rd episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror, classic slashers, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror adjacent, thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each week, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Gotta say. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated, of course. Super big shout out again to Karl Gudding, who gifted me this awesome Michael Myers bobblehead, complete with the hedge. Thank you, Karl. Do him a solid and check out his YouTube show, How Many to .08, which is exactly the type of YouTube channel that it sounds like. Breathalyzers are involved. I'll leave the link in the show notes, but enough of all that housekeeping, because today I have the privilege of welcoming back for his second appearance, and hopefully one with fewer technical issues, the one, the only Matthew Hidalgo. Matt, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good. Hi, everybody listening or watching. Yeah, doing great. Loving the season. Halloween's always the best.
You know it. You know, for a lot of us horror fans, it's Halloween all year long, but it's extra Halloween-y right now. So yes.
It's great when you don't. It's great when you don't feel like the outsider and the whole world is celebrating with you. That's nice.
Absolutely. And been a great year for scary movies and the scary movie adjacent. I know there's that new Argentinian horror film that just popped out on Shudder, and I'm struggling to think of the title, but I need to get to that. But it's on the list, definitely. We got a good one for Halloween this year. Today's film is the 1978 John Carpenter classic, the one that started it all, Halloween, directed by Carpenter and co-written with Deborah Hill, with an absolute banger score from John Carpenter. This film is an absolute masterclass in how to ramp up tension. Matt, this is one of your, if not your favorite scary films of all time. Why Halloween?
This is in my top 10 for favorite films of all time. Like, this movie is so well done. Like you said, the cast, the score, like,
oh yeah.
So my history with this film goes back to probably when I was about my oldest son's age, 7. AMC, classic horror movie around this time. Apparently Halloween is an okay movie to air at 7 p.m. on Halloween. So sure enough, I didn't go trick-or-treating one year. I watched this movie and it burned in me a love-hate relationship with home invasion film. Like, that is a fear of mine because of this movie. But at the same time, it's like I don't get a rush like I do outside of home invasion films, and I have to honor it with this movie.
All right. That is absolutely fair. Yeah, I think it's probably a similar story for me, probably seeing it somewhere edited for television. It's to be fair, it's a relatively tame film by today's standards, but yeah, there's some shit in here that probably somebody under 10 probably shouldn't be seeing.
Ramping up the tension, man. That's really what gets you. It starts out weird with the whole, I mean, not to get into it, but the movie starts out a little odd. And it just, that ramping of tension, like you said, it just builds and builds and builds, and you're waiting for stuff to happen. And then when it does, it's just like the flood wall breaks.
Yeah. It's like the last probably 20, 25 minutes. It's just nonstop go, slash. It's, as Scarpino likes to say, stab. It's it gets going, and it's had this wonderful, probably good hour-long plus build of all these little teases, and it's like, when is this finally gonna happen? And then it does, and it's just glorious. And all that's anchored with the great Donald Pleasance. um
Mm,
just outstanding. And of course, Jamie Lee, this is like her first big role for her.
big role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's outstanding. And not to discount the people that play her friends, and the kids, and everybody else in the film, but yeah, those two performances. And then of course, um the real star of the movie, Michael Myers.
Michael Myers, Nick Castle.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
presence. I don't know if you've seen on TikTok, there's a great series of like the Myers family of Decatur, Illinois, or whatever, where it's this
No.
dude and his very, very young child, both dressed as Michael Myers. And he'll
Oh.
often just sit out at the end of the driveway with an electronic keyboard and play the Halloween theme while his kid dances around to it. And he'll be very much in character as Michael Myers, extra stoic, no real motions of the head or anything. But
Yeah.
then they have segments of them going to Costco and things like that. And
Oh.
occasionally his wife apologizing to neighbors or other folks, or telling the kid to get the fake knife out of the eye hole of the mask. It's good stuff. But yeah, just
I'll have to
the
find this.
yes. I need to remember to share one of those with you. Just to force it upon you there. But just the way that the character of Michael Myers moves,
Hmm.
and all of that, of course, Nick Castle and plenty of others who have played the character have imitated it quite well. This is the original blueprint here, though. Just
Yep.
it's with purpose. It's methodical. It's just he's not running because he doesn't have to,
Nope. Everything's thought out.
because
Everything
Michael
is thought out.
Myers
He's got
is
his little traps and
inevitable,
oh
right? It's
yeah. Yeah.
so good.
Yep.
Just
You know,
ridiculously fun.
something that's in this one that I feel like is only in well, it's in H2O2. So it's only really in the fourth movie and then in H2O as well, is the stalking.
Mm,
I feel like in none of the others does he really do a lot of stalking. He's just like you're following him and then he murders and then he moves on to the next victim. With this, you're actually watching him. There's that voyeuristic
yep.
following of the high schoolers, and it's unsettling, it's upsetting because you know what's going to happen and you just can't do anything about it. Like there's a scene there's a scene that I love where the girls are driving by the hardware shop
Mhm.
and Annie sees her dad, Sheriff Brackett, and they have their little exchange. And then Annie drives off, and then Dr. Loomis arrives, and Brackett and Loomis are talking. And after they have their brief conversation, Michael Myers, like in the state hospital car, just drives right by, and Loomis
Yep.
just doesn't see it. And it's just, it could have ended there. It could have ended there, but it didn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how so much of that is all one take as well. Or
Hmm.
if it
Hmm.
isn't, it sure feels like it. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's so many moments in this film of characters doing their thing, like Annie doing her Annie shit on the phone. And
Hmm. Love it. Love
you
it.
see her kind of pass by the patio door to the backyard, and
Yeah.
there's nothing there, but then Michael's there, but then he's gone again.
Not.
And
Hmm.
stuff like that, where you see Michael here and there, the bit where he runs into Tommy Doyle after he trips and smashes the pumpkin,
Hmm.
and kind of grabs him and then lets him go. It's just he's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you're
Omnipresent.
waiting for it to happen, just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I mean, it does eventually, but yeah, but it has you on pins and needles for the entire thing.
Mhm.
It's wow. Wow. I know Ebert compared this to Psycho, and he's not wrong.
No, of
it's,
course. Of course. It's
it's,
hard to not. And Carpenter himself has mentioned taking inspiration. That's one of the reasons why they cast Jamie Lee Curtis,
yeah,
whose mom, I'm
yeah,
forgetting her name, but is in
Janet Leigh.
Psycho.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yes, Janet
yeah,
Leigh. So
uh,
it's all there in the DNA, but there's
yeah.
something so different about it.
Yes, and I, again, kind of a blueprint for so much to follow. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you just home invasion films and
Yep.
slashers and I mean, just thrillers in general. They wouldn't be what they have been in the past 40 plus
Mhm.
years,
No.
without Halloween. So,
Yep.
yeah, as we're recording this, it's essentially what the 45th
45th.
anniversary
Yeah. Yeah.
of the movie. It's that was just like the other day or something. It's a shocker that it's as old as it is, but I mean,
I know.
I've been going through a lot of films from the 70s lately, just like Don't Look Now. That's a 50-year-old film at this point. So is The
Mm-hmm.
Exorcist. And so many of these films hold up so well out of the 70s. It's and so many were, if not genre starters, almost genre defining. Um, so I just found myself very fortunate to be revisiting
Yeah.
a lot of these films lately. And yeah, it's God, why the hell not? Just again,
You know,
absolute bangers.
there's something about 70s cinema that when you think about good solid 70s cinema that is
Hmm.
so inherently timeless. Don't know
Yeah.
what it is because it all looks 70s,
Yeah.
but like Jaws, Star Wars, Halloween, like they're all timeless films. And it's
Hmm.
more than just the theming. It's just they are just timeless movies.
Yeah, and there's something really special about a lot of 70s films because it's when a lot of films started getting a lot more experimental, a lot more what we would call art house.
Hmm.
Just there's just a very, very cool vibe from that era. Um, so
A lot of new
yeah.
tech,
Yeah, that too.
a lot of new
Absolutely.
film tech. Yeah. To bring it back to Halloween, the Steadicam.
Yeah.
Carpenter found out about the Steadicam, and because he didn't want to use the dolly, because setting up a dolly track was going to be too time
Oh yeah.
intensive, cost too much. It would end up spending too much of their resources with the limited amount of time that they had to film. So when he heard about the Steadicam, he was like, "I need that. I need one of those." And that's how you have the entire opening shot in Steadicam.
That's
It's just
nice.
you have Michael Myers' perception walking into the house, following his sister upstairs, grabbing the knife, which again, played by Deborah Hill, the little child hands.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just a very small woman. Um,
Hmm.
but
Yep.
uh, yeah, I mean, speaking of that scene, we should jump into it. I mean, we start
Yeah.
off with the opening credits and this absolute
Mm,
banger theme
mm,
from Carpenter
mm.
that we are
Love it.
very fortunate with him that I know not everybody is into synths. God, I've met so many people recently that are just anti synthesizer as far as their musical tastes. But man, you can't discount the talent of Carpenter with his scoring. Um,
Hmm.
for one, because he's able to put together such iconic tracks and they just suit
Hmm.
his movies so well. I mean, that's a nice plus of just kind of doing it all because everything is going to gel, right? But yeah, you get that nice slow zoom into the burning jack-o'-lantern, which I love that they played with that throughout the
Series.
David
Yeah.
Gordon Green,
It's been good. Yep.
reboots, in
Yep.
particular. Say
The
what you want
rotting of
about
the
those.
pumpkin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's been
yeah,
that's been a fun little homage to carry through.
yes, yes. And we just start off with Haddonfield, Illinois, Halloween, 1963. Ooh, that's a long time ago now. Um, but yeah, we just start immediately with this POV shot that we don't quite realize is one until, the camera starts to move in, seeing this young couple, kissing behind the front door of this house. And you see them kind of dart over to the couch, and the perspective kind of moves around and peers in through the window again with the stalking that you brought up. And you hear them talk about, hey, are we alone? Well, Michael's around here somewhere. And she's, of course, referring to her little brother. This is Judith Myers. And the boyfriend kind of kisses at her with this clown mask that he had found on the floor or whatever.
Ugh.
And I know.
Yeah.
And she kind of pushes him off, but relents when he asks to go upstairs. And they dart upstairs, and the perspective kind of shifts around. One little bit that I caught for maybe the very first time on this rewatch for this podcast, as you see the point of view move to the back door, you see the little shadow of this child play
Uh-huh.
across the wall of, the outside wall of the house. And that, you know, you could have completely left that out. You could have inadvertently had the shadow of the camera person holding the camera for this.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of ways that this could play, but the little kid shadow that plays across is just, again, absolutely perfect. I don't know if that was Deborah Hill's shadow or what, or how this played out, but it absolutely has to be intentional, and I love it.
Yeah, I think it was hers. She was talking in so you mentioned 45th a few minutes ago. I have my first copy of the film on DVD way back when, 25th anniversary of the
Okay.
film. Oh, that's fun to see. It's a 20-year-old DVD copy. But in the behind the scenes on that, they mention how hard it was to film this entire set because the lighting had to be perfect. Everything had to be precisely in place. And as they're filming the shot, it looks like it's all in one take. But they couldn't do it in one take because the film reel, like, it would end before it could finish. So they actually had to splice it in 3 different shots.
Is the splice hidden by the mask going on? I would assume that it is.
That's one.
Yeah.
That's one. The next is right after he murders and he turns from the room into the hall.
Okay, that's a good place to do it.
The screen goes black, and then it's the stairs down. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because the POV goes inside through the door and then into the kitchen, where, of course, the little hand reaches out for the drawer and grabs a chef's knife and starts making his way through the living room. And you see the little fire truck by the console TV. We learn later that this is a 6-year-old. That's terrifying. And that
it is her brother. Like that.
Yeah. And here's one of the most disturbing things of this early scene. The boyfriend comes down the stairs less than 2 minutes from going up the stairs.
Oh yeah. That's gotten a lot of traction over the years.
I'm sure it has. And we get the, I'll call you. You promise? Sure. Well, we know that's not going to happen now, but
no.
The figure makes his way up the stairs and finds the mask outside the bedroom door, pops that on, finds Judith and just her undies there at her vanity, brushing her hair. And she reacts when he's just looming over her with a Michael and kind of covers herself. And then, yes, we get the stabbing from there. And it's, for what it is, it's fairly tasteful. You barely see anything. It's, I'm sure at the time it was fairly titillating, but, so to speak. As soon as the deed is done and Judith is bleeding out there on the floor, you get that little quick turnaround, hiding that splice and just booking it down the stairs. Steps outside as a car is pulling up, and you get a couple of, they're obviously the parents at this point, but walking up, and the father reaches out and grabs the masks and just questions with a Michael, and then it lingers on them just staring at him for way too long.
Yep.
The mom just shoving her hands in her pockets there. That bit's a little weird to me. And I don't know if it's more to just let the score play out, but
I haven't found any research for that. In this recent watch, I was like, well, maybe the scene just like pauses. Like if you're looking at a Shakespearean play, like this is where the scene ends. We're pulling away. Then the curtain goes down. So
could be.
No idea.
Yep, none whatsoever. But then we cut to 15 years later on Devil's Night of 1978. And it's a dark and stormy night. We've got Dr. Loomis, played by the great Donald Pleasance. And he's with this Nurse Chambers. They're heading to the institution where Michael has been kept all these years because they've got to pick him up and take him to a court date, something to do with probably deciding his future. They make a little small talk as they drive along here, and it's discussed how, just in all this time, he's never really seen anything in the kid. It's just nothing. And the nurse, I think, comments a little bit here about, how that's a little bleak and a little uncouth too, for somebody who's supposed to be his
doctor.
Yes. But at the end of the day, Loomis is all about making sure that he just never sees or, really breathes free air again, because he is pure evil as far as he is concerned. And they make their way a little closer to the institution. And as they approach the front gate, they see a bunch of the patients kind of milling around outside, which is a really unsettling scene.
Yeah. Especially with how poorly it's lit.
Yeah.
So you're getting the shot, like the headlights hitting those white gowns.
Yeah, they're basically lighting the whole scene other than maybe a couple of flashes of lightning. And also you got to think back, mental health is still not wonderful or anything, but you got to consider institutions like that in the 60s and the 70s and how horrible things were. And, a scene of a bunch of people just let loose to wander around in the rain in that perspective just rings a little extra like
hard.
Oh yeah. So obviously Loomis knows that something's up, and so he hops out of the car to run up to the gate and see what's going on. And
now it occurred to me this recent watch, why didn't you pull up closer? Why didn't you park a good, multiple feet from the gate, and then Loomis has to run to the,
especially considering the torrential downpour. I know he's got a raincoat on and everything, but it's really, just more of a trench, not really super waterproof or anything. Yeah. Well, I think it's more to give the car some distance to let the new portion here play out. Yeah. because as he runs up, we get that little spidery cue of the store as Michael in just his hospital gown crawls on top of the car.
Oh,
Oh, I know. And there is some weight on top of this car. So you got to
yep.
figure.
You hear it.
Oh, yeah. This is a 21-year-old, but this is a 20-year-old with some bulk.
Hmm.
This is pure muscle. And obviously the nurse is freaked out. And, there's the hand that reaches in through the open window and she kind of crawls back to the other side. And here's one of the one bits of, obvious, this is clear filmmaking because you see the little disc on the hand to help with breaking the glass.
Breaking the glass. Yep.
Yeah, as the hand, swoops down to do that. It's like, yeah, they couldn't really cover that up super well, but
I like to think of it as Michael is not at this point not superhuman,
mm,
so he needed that metal like wrench in order to break the window.
yeah, he picked something up and used that. That's what it was.
Exactly. Yeah. Why not?
Sure, we'll go with that. So yeah, she, ends up basically falling out of the vehicle trying to get away. And Michael just kind of climbs in and peels off.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The evil's gone from here.
Yes. Yeah. It's, Loomis is definitely a little bit on the tad dramatic side, but he's got reason to be. Um,
Donald
but
Pleasance like plays that off. Like watching the behind the scenes again, like
yeah.
he was not 100% on board with any of this just because again the murder at the beginning was very titillating and that was not something he was supportive of, and he didn't appreciate how melodramatic the story was. But all that considered, he was a professional. He was super friendly on set. He understood that this was his job, that to sell it the best that he could. And hell, we got a hell of a movie because of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I really would not want him any other way from the performance that we get in this film.
Hmm.
I think my other favorite film that he's in is The Great Escape, which
Oh,
is
okay.
just a huge ensemble cast, but his
Mm,
character is a lot of fun in that one too. He's just a great actor. Um,
hmm.
but yeah, the car peels off, and well, crap. I forget exactly from here what we cut to. Um, but
Lori
is it
exiting the
right to
house.
Lori the next day?
I
Okay,
think
yeah.
so. Yeah.
Okay, so she's leaving for school, and her dad, who's a local realtor, needs her to put the key under the mat for the old Myers house
Myers
because
place.
he's going to
Yeah.
be showing so at some point that day. And I guess we didn't have lock boxes to throw on the doorknob back then, but because just leaving it under the mat seems, I understand small town, but still.
I mean, the shots that we see inside the house later on in the film, I'm like, I think this house is ready to show.
No, I think they were just trying to, dump this house as fast as they possibly could. And that's
Yeah.
it. It's a unique fixer upper kind of situation, right?
Hmm. It's
Um,
got history.
oh, does it ever? So yeah, as she heads off to school and run this little errand, she runs into Tommy Doyle, she's going to be babysitting later that night. Tommy is probably like in late grade school or something like that.
Mm.
And yeah, they talk about what they're going to do. Are they going to carve pumpkins and watch monster movies, all that fun stuff? And yeah, they're going to do it all. Then he finds out what the little errand is that she's on, and
Mhm.
he has a little freak out because he's been told never to go up to that house because, of course, this is a 15-year-old lawn story in their little town, and the Myers house is
Murder house.
considered the murder house. Yeah. what does he call it? A spook house.
Spook
Um,
house.
yeah. But she's like, I'll show you. And, she just walks up, puts the key under the mat and walks back. Little does she know, however,
Uh-huh.
she's being watched from the inside by a presence. Um, yeah. I think we cut at some point here back to Loomis on the road on the way to Haddonfield. He's either leaving the sanatorium and talking to the director there and giving him an earful, or he's made it to that phone booth where the wrecker has been kind of discarded off the side of the road, and it's one of those.
Yes.
But
He's leaving the hospital. Because I
okay,
love that interaction between him and what's his name? Childress? I forget, but the director of the hospital.
yeah.
And there's that dialogue exchange where he's like, he couldn't even drive a car. And Loomis replies with,
He's
he
doing
was
very
doing
well.
pretty well last night.
Maybe somebody
Yeah,
gave
I
him
just love that
lessons.
interaction. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure he learned by watching TV. Probably plenty of cop shows and so on. But yeah, Loomis is kind of pissed. And the director of the facility is pissed at him and like, well, you were his doctor. You should have been under control or whatever. It's
You
like,
should have said something. You should have said
right.
something.
And he
And he's like,
did.
I
He's
told
like,
everyone.
for the past 15 years, I've been ranting and raving about this dude. Yes. Um, yeah. Yeah. I think we go from here to school, and Lori is sitting in class, and you get that great rambling, droning teacher dialogue going on and on about fate.
Fate.
And it's perfect. I love how they bring back the same dialogue in Halloween 2018.
Mhm.
But yes, as Laurie is sitting there kind of towards the back of the classroom at a window seat, she happens to look up and she sees, somebody
Oh,
standing out there
yeah.
staring at her. And she's a little distracted, but obviously not distracted enough not to, be able to
To
respond when
answer
the
the
teacher
question
calls on
correctly.
her. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a good student. Clearly a good student. She's got a
clearly.
giant stack of books she deals with. She's made fun of that by her friends, but yeah, when she looks back out the window, of course Michael's gone because that's his shtick. That's his superpower. He appears and
Yeah.
disappears at will. Um, but yeah, Laurie is clearly being stalked at this point. Um, and let's see here. From here, is it
We get the
Tom?
truck scene where it's the
Okay.
side of the road with Loomis.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
wrecker is like off in the ditch, and Loomis is
Mhm.
at the phone booth trying to talk to the police in Haddonfield, and nobody really wants to listen to him. And the best part in this little scene is that there's the dead body of the tow truck driver that
Yep.
is off in the distance that Loomis doesn't actually find. He just finds the matchbook from the nurse that he was driving with the
This
evening
car.
prior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he also finds Michael's hospital gown draped over
Mm.
like the door of the wrecker or something like that. And he knows something bad has happened, but I love that he doesn't find the body.
Find the
It's
body. Yeah.
yeah, that's good. That's good. I think school's letting out from here, and we've got Tommy being
Uh-huh.
boiled, or
Tommy
Tommy
Doyle.
Doyle being bullied by his some of his friends there, or at least classmates, and they're teasing him about how the boogeyman's going to come and get him. He's kind of at that age where he's getting to the point where he might be a little too old for trick or treating. And his
Mhm.
friends clearly are at the age where they're going to go egg houses and soap windows and shit like that.
Mm.
Um,
They're going to
but
go into the Myers place, as we'll see later in the film.
yeah. And one of them is the character that's played by Robert Longstreet in the newer trilogy.
The new one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Halloween Kills.
Yeah, I can't remember the character's name, but it's the one that Laurie
Lonnie.
teases. Lonnie, yes,
Lonnie.
because he's the one that Laurie teases Tommy about, like, oh, if he
Mhm.
told you to jump
Well,
off a bridge, that kind of situation.
he's the
Yeah,
one that walks up to the Myers place while Loomis is at the bush,
right.
and Loomis is like, "Hey, get the hell out of here, Lonnie."
Yeah, yeah, scaring the shit
Loomis
out
looks
of
like
those
he has that
kids.
he has that face of like, so like I did it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. He's so proud of himself.
He's
But
so proud of himself.
yeah, these kids, they trip Tommy, and he's got this great big pumpkin that he was gonna,
I
use to cut,
know.
and you feel so
Our
bad. And when he
Yeah.
gets up and trudges away like a, downtrodden Charlie Brown type character, this is where Michael grabs him by the shoulders and
Not him.
stuff.
Not him. It's one of the
Oh,
other kids.
is it one of the
One of
other
the other
kids?
kids is
I could have
yeah, one of the other kids is
sworn.
running away and runs into Michael.
Okay.
And Michael like stops him and the kid just looks up. You don't see
Mhm.
Michael at this point. The kid just
No.
looks up and then Michael lets him go and then he runs off. He's following Tommy. So Tommy starts
That's what it is.
walking
Tommy's
across the
behind the
school.
fence. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. But just unsettling.
Yeah.
It's at this point, Michael hasn't really offed anybody in town that we know of,
Mm-mm.
but oof. Yeah, he is a presence, that's for sure. And then we get Laurie meeting up with her friends Annie and Linda. And of course, Linda's the kind of bubble-headed blonde.
Totally.
Yeah. Yes, that's what she keeps saying throughout this entire
Yep.
film because
Yep.
she is that airhead. They make fun of Laurie carrying all her books, and she keeps going on and on about how she forgets all of her books all the time because what good are books, right? And this is where everybody's distracted except for Laurie, who sees Michael standing just a little bit out from the side of a hedge down the street.
Mm-mm. You missed the spot. The
Oh, did
drive-by.
I? Oh,
The
yeah.
drive-by. That's where Michael drives by the three of them
Yes,
in
the
the station
speed
wagon.
kills. And then he manages to kind of
Yeah.
get ahead of them and get out of the car. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they think it's a classmate of theirs.
Mhm.
And, they're just, they make a comment about, why is it people with cars that always, blah, blah, blah. And it just, yeah. It's Annie that yells at him and he just slams on the
Yeah.
brakes and, they're like, can you take a joke or whatever? And then drives away. And yes,
Drives away.
we get to this moment of he's gotten ahead of them and he's stalking them from behind a hedgerow and just how he's just barely standing out. And then when Laurie tries to get their attention, this is when she turns away. And of course, when they all look up, he's gone because again, it's just Michael's shtick, right?
Mhm.
And Annie decides, well, she's going to go and, be the brave one here. And then she decides to be kind of a dick to Laurie about it,
Yeah.
saying, oh, hey, wants to ask you out or whatever. And of course, when they walk up, there's nobody there.
Poor Lori scared another one away. She
Right.
tells her.
Yeah. Yeah. And they all kind of part ways to get ready for the evening. Both Laurie and Annie have babysitting duties.
Mhm.
Linda is going to be hanging out with her boyfriend Bob, and they're going to find a way to sync up. They talk about, and it's just kind of a fairly loose set of plans for the evening. Annie even talks about how her boyfriend Paul got himself grounded, and how just things aren't going to really work out with that because and that's why she's got her babysitting gig and everything else.
Yep.
And they're going to be at
She's
houses.
got that line where she's like, "Oh, great! I can either hang out with you, or I can either listen to you make out, or spend time with Lori."
Yeah,
And he's clearly the
nice
dick of the group.
Yep. But they're going to be babysitting at houses kind of across the street from each other. So Annie, she's going to pick Laurie up for the evening and drive her. And yeah, they kind of part ways then. And this is where we get Loomis showing up in Haddonfield. And he's at the cemetery talking with the caretaker there. And the caretaker's just kind of rambling on and on as they head towards, a particular missing headstone. It's Judith Meyer's grave. And the caretaker talks about kids doing this kind of thing all the time. Really? Do they really steal Judith Meyer's headstone all the time?
A whole headstone? Like, holy shit, that's a big thing to steal.
Yeah. Well, considering when we see it later, it's a particularly large one too.
Big thing to steal.
Yeah. It's, again, Michael, just kind of pure muscle. But yeah.
But then you have that line from Loomis. He's come home.
Yes. And then we're back to Laurie at home, and she gets a phone call with some obscene chewing, and turns out it's actually
scene out the window.
Yeah, we get the scene out the window. We get the clothesline with the sheets blowing in the wind, and Michael standing there that has been memed to death, but it's so good.
Without looking away, he's gone.
Yep.
So it's one of those, like, Laurie's clearly now, like, affected by him. So she's seeing him places now. Like, been there, like, having this fear of home invasions and stuff, and, like, these kinds of movies, like, really hitting me. Yeah, I've been in that situation where it's late at night and I look out the window for one reason to close a window or something. And sure enough, I see something there. I know it's not there, but sure as hell, like, it's unnerving to see.
Yep. And turns out the phone call is Annie. She's just trying to firm up plans for the evening. And yeah, I think just a little bit from here, we've got Annie picking her up, and as they're driving along, they're smoking a little bit of
reefer.
Weed there. And of course, Laurie is super straight-laced and is hacking her brains out. And then they see Annie's father, who's the sheriff, Lee Brackett. And they try to hide the joint, and of course they're not doing a good job of it. The dad knows.
Of course.
But he doesn't do anything because he's the cool sheriff, I guess. They ask him what's going on because they're in front of this hardware store where there's an alarm going off like crazy, and they can barely
shouting
hear
at each other.
Yeah, and it's a comment that Annie makes, and he shouts too, she says. And he's like, it's just somebody took some rope and a couple of Halloween masks and some knives or whatever. It's like, oh, and knives, okay. But they drive off as I kind of forgot that lovely bit after Annie walks up to her house, but Laurie's continuing on home where she's not really looking where she's going, and she runs right into the sheriff.
Bracket.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I guess everybody's entitled to a good scare, he says. Oh, Jesus. But he sends them on their way from the hardware store. And like we had discussed, this is where Loomis comes in just after they leave. And as he's talking to the sheriff, we've got the state vehicle that he had stolen driving by. It's just so good. The sheriff just doesn't really want to hear any of this from Loomis. He's got other things to worry about. He's got this robbery. It's Halloween. They're all going to be busy. But also, I don't remember if it's here or a little bit later on how he talks about, we can't just, pump this out over the news and everything else just because they're going to be seeing Michael Myers everywhere. It's,
the payoff of that is one of the best scenes in a later movie.
Yes. And Halloween 2, when we get that, poor unfortunate dude. But
Ben Tramer.
Yes, Ben Tramer, would be love interest for for Laurie, but
Yep.
we'll get there. Yeah, that's another thing that we kind of missed. In Laurie's bedroom, as she's talking to Annie, Annie reveals that it's the homecoming dance the following night,
Mhm.
and she had kind of name dropped Laurie with Ben because Laurie had talked about how she liked him as they were walking home from school, and Laurie's just mortified. Um, but yeah, things that could have been, right?
Yeah.
Missed opportunities. Um, yeah. So let's see here. I can't remember. I think we
After that, it's the drive. It's more driving,
yeah,
basically.
and basically getting to their respective houses for the evening.
Hmm.
And we at some point or another pop back to Sheriff Brackett and Loomis investigating the Myers house,
Hmm.
and they find a dead dog inside, and there's the comment about how
Hmm.
Michael must have gotten hungry. That's wow, that's
Could have
something.
been a skunk. Could have
Yep,
been a skunk.
it could have
Brackett
been a
says.
skunk. Yeah, yeah. It's I know skunks will definitely eat dead animals, but I don't know
Hmm.
about a skunk attacking a dog like that.
I know, and like mauling it. Apparently.
Right. But yeah, they kind of explore the upstairs, and we get that great bit of one of the gutters crashing through the window and
Hmm.
startling them. And yeah, Loomis talks about how he came to realize that Michael is pure evil. And
Hmm. He has that
it's,
really good monologue about his
yeah,
little backstory interaction with Michael.
yep.
The devil's eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's boy, we know where Mike Flanagan got his chops from
Hmm.
here. Uh
Hmm.
but yeah. He's he's ready for the worst of it. And the sheriff is just still not on board. Not quite at least.
Hmm.
But he does play along for somebody who doesn't seem like he's not on the same page with Loomis. How I guess he at least understands that yes, Michael is out there. He has escaped. There's a good chance that he's come back to
There.
Haddonfield.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
like to his credit, Sheriff Brackett is possibly the best character in the film. Not that he has a substantial role or anything, but like he's a really nice guy.
yeah.
Like he plays off Lori and Annie really, really well. Like you
Hmm.
said, he clearly knows they were smoking, but doesn't do shit about it. He gives Loomis the benefit of the doubt. Does he believe everything Loomis says? No, but he's willing to listen to Loomis,
Hmm.
follow Loomis, and take Loomis's advice in terms of patrolling the area, just making sure cops are informed, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. And it's retconned in later films, of course, the most
Yeah.
recent
Well.
ones that, he was one of the original officers on the scene.
Mhm.
But mm, or no, I'm sorry. That was what's his face from oh Jesus, what's the actor's name from The Postman and plenty of other stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
who you're
yeah.
thinking of. Uh,
I'm mixing up my Halloween cops, but that's okay.
it's all right.
Yeah, but yeah. Michael, of course, is following Annie and Laurie to their babysitting jobs. Laurie's got Tommy at his house, and they're watching cheesy movies, and he she's kind of fairly invested in the film that they're watching, but he wants to deal with the jack-o'-lantern and popcorn and everything else, and he also wants her to read to him, but not what they normally read. Now he's into some cheesy
Mhm.
comic books, and
Yep.
Laurie's not impressed.
Tarantula Man. Yeah.
Yeah, Laser Man. And she can see why his parents don't like him because of course he's got him hid under the
Uh huh.
couch.
Under the
um
couch.
yeah. At one point or another they're actually watching The Thing from Another World, which is
Yeah.
a wonderful foreshadowing because 4 years later we get John Carpenter's The Thing. Just
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the original Salvo in his Apocalypse trilogy, and just an outstanding film that was not loved in its original release, but got such a following afterwards.
It's watching the two films back to back, as in the original Thing from Another World and his The Thing.
yeah,
They're a really good pair. Really good pair. Because
yeah,
it's one of those to where taking out a few things from the first movie, The Thing could be a sequel. That's just the vibe and the story that they carry. It could be a sequel to
nice,
everything that happened in the original.
very nice. Yeah, I've never done them back to back like that. I should give that a go sometime. But yeah, we get their interaction, and over at Lindsay's house, Lindsay Wallace, um, Annie is working on making popcorn, and she gets a bunch of butter all over herself. And this is while she's on the phone with Laurie, and she's kind of pacing back and forth in the kitchen. And we get that wonderful bit of Michael at the patio door and then not at the patio door. And also around this time, the family dog, which is this great big German Shepherd. They let him outside because he's kind of growling, and Annie is apparently not great with this dog. And she has Lindsay let the dog outside, and the dog runs into Michael, and like you said, the dog gets offed. Maybe another little nighttime snack for Michael. Who knows? But I know that's just grisly. But Annie makes a little comment when she hears the dog whimper outside about how maybe he found a hot date. Okay.
Why not?
Sure. But yes, Annie has managed to get butter all over herself. I don't know how. But it's just an excuse basically for her to get mostly naked and have to change into a shirt and stuff and go try to do some laundry out in the garage. I love how she has her car pulled into their garage, which is also weird.
Yeah.
But
I hadn't thought of that. You're right.
Why she wouldn't just park in the driveway or on the street, I don't know. But
well, I think she parks on the street when they first get there, because the parents would have had to leave at some point, right?
Maybe. I don't know. It just feels weird that she would pull into their garage. But I mean, it all plays out for the best, of course. But in the little laundry room that's attached to the garage or whatever, she gets stuck with the door. There's like a bad latch or something like that, and she of course tries to crawl out the window again. Just an excuse to have a girl in her undies with her ass hanging out. But she calls out for Lindsay, and Lindsay gets a phone call from the boyfriend Paul at some point here, and she has to go help Annie get unstuck. And and she's like, not a word of this, right? And of course, Lindsay comes right in. Yep.
First thing Lindsay says to Paul,
she was stuck in the window. And I think Michael is kind of checking things out during all of this as well.
Yeah.
It's good. But yeah,
in the behind the scenes, one of the things that they pointed out that they do throughout the film is, and this goes to show Carpenter's film style, like how well and knowledgeable he is about film up to this point already, is traditionally when you're filming a scene, there is the wide shot that has both sides of the screen taken up for action. And so when you have a scene like with Annie in the laundry room, Annie's over here, nothing's going on over here. So the audience is led to believe something's going to come into this frame, something's going to happen to Annie, nothing happens. And so you get that rise of tension because you see Michael in some pan shots. Here he is out there, here he is over there. So you're thinking he's going to come in, doesn't though. And those thoughts remain. Annie's over here, nothing here. Go back to your building tension. Like that's one way Carpenter is able to build that tension by tricking his audience into expecting something to happen,
Yeah.
and nothing happens.
Well, just like how we expect when somebody is backing up to the edge of the scene and you expect
Mhm.
somebody to be behind them or to jump out behind them when that happens. And a lot of filmmakers will use that along with nobody being there then.
Mm.
When they get up to the edge of the screen, where they'll let it linger on that type of shot for a little bit. And I think that even gets used once or twice throughout this movie, too. But,
I think so.
but yeah, I love that kind of thing. Just playing with expectations, getting you a little ramped up, and then, no real payoff yet. But yeah, it's good stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think this is where, with Paul and Annie on the phone, they kind of hatch their plan for Annie to come pick him up, kind of spring him from his being grounded purgatory there so that they can have some
Mhm.
fun because what's her butt and Bob are going to be coming over at some point anyways.
Linda.
Yeah. And
But yeah,
so now
side
Annie's,
story.
oh,
Side story that is introduced, I think, at the beginning of the movie with Laurie's parents. They're going to a Halloween party. That's where Lindsay's parents are at. That's where Tommy Doyle's parents are at. And that's where Paul's parents go. That's why Paul is able to sneak out of the house. There's some Halloween party going on that
gotcha.
all the parents are going to, but none of the kids are going to.
Now, is that, it's been so long since I've seen it. Is that introduced in Halloween 2
It's
or
brought up in Halloween too. It's
okay.
why the hospital's understaffed at the beginning of the film, because the doctor
Gotcha.
was at the Halloween party.
That
It's
makes
also
sense.
why when the doctor comes back is drunk, because he was at the Halloween party.
Also makes sense. I
Yep.
love how the David Gordon Green trilogy plays homage to that with things that are set up in the first part that
Mm-hmm.
come back in the second. Along with certain characters that you see driving off for the evening, or we come into contact that come back then in the second because they're either going to that dive bar where Tommy Doyle
Mm-hmm.
hangs out with Nurse Chapman and Lindsay and all that stuff.
Their anniversary recovery program.
Right. That's fun. That's really fun. I like that. Um, so yes, this is where Annie tries to convince Lindsay to go with her to pick up Paul. Well, she doesn't want to do that. She's transfixed by watching the thing on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then she gets this bright idea. Well, what if I fix it this? You could watch movies with Tommy Doyle for the rest of the night. She
Mm-hmm.
thinks that's pretty cool. So they head on over to the Doyle house, and Laurie makes fun of Annie a little bit at her attire there. She's just basically walking around in a men's shirt and a blanket to
Nothing
kind of
else.
help cover herself
Yeah.
up. Yep. Um, and she lets herself be convinced to watch both kids so that Annie can get her fuck on. And ultimately, Annie pops back over to the Wallace house and gets in her car in the garage, only to find,
She doesn't get in her car.
oh
She
no,
goes to her car and finds it's locked. She forgot her keys. So she
that's right.
goes into the house, gets her keys, comes back to the garage, instinctively opens the car door, realizing, oh, I thought it was locked. That's why I got my keys. She gets in, no worries, no problem.
So Michael had already been in there and had it locked to kind of
Mm-hmm.
give him
Yep.
a little bit of a chance to get ready. But in the meantime, all of his heavy breathing there in the vehicle has really fogged up the windshield. And she's kind of rubbing at that, and of course she gets attacked from behind, and he kind of just chokes her out. Um, Yeah. I love her slumping forward onto the car horn. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But
You
yeah,
hear it
yeah,
echoing away.
yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah, we get Linda and Bob arriving at the Wallace house.
Just
Or
before that, I think we get the scene of Michael carrying Annie's body out of the garage. I don't understand how nobody else notices this outside of Tommy Doyle. He's carrying a body in the front yard through the
yeah,
house.
I
But you
wonder
get that
though,
awesome
is this
scene.
before
Go ahead.
or after Bob and Linda get into the house? Because I feel like him bringing the body into the house would not be the best idea before they got there. I don't know, but
I don't think he knew they were coming at that point, though.
yeah, I suppose that's true. But where does he put the body in the house? That's a good question. Um,
No idea.
yeah,
I just remember
regardless,
Tommy speaking,
yeah.
Tommy doing the whole "it's the boogeyman," and freaking everybody out.
Right. Yep. And he happens to see all this because he's trying to freak Lindsay out as she's watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So he's hiding behind the curtain of the front window there, and he happens to turn around and see Michael carrying the body. And yes, it's the boogeyman. It's the boogeyman, gets all freaked out, and Laurie has to calm everybody down.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She's always got to be the adult in the room, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The Girl Scout.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we eventually do get Bob and Linda rolling up in Bob's van with beer cans spilling out when they open the door, and they've clearly had a few. Um, they talk over their plan, and we get that
Yep.
super creepy bit from Bob about first I rip your clothes off, then I rip off Lindsay's clothes, and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because he's pretty drunk at this point. But
Yeah.
yes, they walk into the house and the lights are all off. There's nobody home. And then ultimately they're just kind of hanging out on the couch waiting for something to happen. They get a call from Laurie, just checking in because she hasn't, heard from anybody about what's going on. And Linda basically gets the green
It's a
flag
go
here.
ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's we're just gonna go up to the master bedroom of the Wallaces and have sex in their bed because that's what happened in these movies in the 70s and the 80s. And God, even into the 90s, look at Scream.
Yeah.
Sydney and Billy use Stu's parents' bedroom. That's not gross at all. No.
Nope. Nope.
But
Teens being teens, according to
you
Carpenter.
know,
Teens being teens.
yeah, I suppose so. But holy shit, still super gross. So yes, they head up there, they do their fooling around, and yeah. We probably get a little bit of either Loomis or more Laurie and the kids, but then we cut back to Linda and Bob finishing up there, and they've got their little back and forth, the whole yeah, and
Give me a
she
beat.
she makes him go get her a beer, and good for her, by the way.
Agreed.
Yes. He goes down to the kitchen, and this is where we get some of those little those shots that kind of tease out what's to come, but don't give you the payoff until you get the payoff of Michael basically lifting him up with his neck, by his neck, and then stabbing him in the chest and
Stabbing
pinning him into the wall.
and pinning him.
Yeah, the amount of force it would take to just drive an 8-inch chef's knife through somebody like that and, make that happen is a lot.
And then you get the iconic head tilt.
Yes, the whole
With
lizard brain.
The one bit of direction that Nick Castle got for the making of this primarily was that scene
Really?
of doing the head tilt from Carpenter. Yeah, what I found out is the shape which I love that that's what he was called behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Such an iconic name for a horror villain, the Shape.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his movement speed, all of that, his styling was inspired by Westworld. Yul Brynner's robot.
Nice.
The
Very
way that
nice.
moves, that's all Carpenter was like, I want that. That is terrifying. That is our villain. And that was the direction Nick Castle got for the movie, was I want you to be like that. Walk, don't run, move with confidence, but don't over exaggerate your movement. Just very minimal direction. And this one scene with Bob, that was where he got the I want you to tilt your head.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Oh, wow. Also, poor Bob. Just, dangling there barefoot. It's, yeah. So, yeah, we cut right back to upstairs where Linda is aggressively filing away at her nails and the door
Yeah, that's
swings.
odd.
Yeah. And I know they're still just trying to play off the bubble-headed blonde type of stereotype where
Mm.
she's just fixated on, her fingernails and her hair and that kind of shit. But yeah, that door swings open and we get that lovely iconic shot of
Yeah,
Michael
another one.
in a sheet as a ghost with Bob's glasses on, basically posing as Bob. And
Yeah.
Linda, of course, just bursts out laughing and, teases him a little bit. And, what's the matter,
Cute
Bob?
Bob.
Can I get your ghost? As she
Yeah.
flashes him. And she's eventually just pissed off because he's just standing there staring. And she gets up to make a call to Lori to, see what the hell's going on. And of course, Laurie picks up the phone right as Linda starts to be choked out by Michael. Um, yeah, yeah, that
The
works.
phone cord.
Yeah, yeah. God, it. Yeah, the things have
First I got
started
Annie's gum
moving.
chewing. Now I'm getting Linda's coital sounds. Something along those
Yeah,
lines.
it's a famous squealing or
Right,
famous
there we go.
moaning or
Famous
something like
squealing.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, she gets choked out and yeah. Yeah, this is where we get Loomis outside the Myers house where
Hmm.
he scares off Lonnie and the other kids. Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there. It's and he's so proud of himself because these kids
Yeah.
scatter like
Yeah.
crazy. But and then he gets a little scare of his own because Brackett comes up behind him there.
Second one. Second bracket scare of the movie.
Yep, yep. It's good. Uh so yeah, they kind of talk about things, how they haven't really found anything. He's got deputies driving around and so on. But yeah, it's shortly after here that Loomis finds the car and he basically gets the confirmation that he's here. And
Hmm.
he tells Brackett to drive around this block. I'm going to head this way. We're going to find this guy. And right around here, I think Laurie is kind of concerned by the phone call and everything, but also just she hasn't really heard anything from anybody. She hasn't seen anybody. um the kids are asleep at this point.
Hmm.
Let's just go check on everybody. She's got the kids tucked in bed upstairs at this point. Um, so she locks up, walks across the street, and I just love the shots of her kind of walking along alone in the dark. It's good. Um, she enters the Wallace house, doesn't find anybody. She kind of calls out again, nobody. Um, and she heads upstairs. And you've got a little bit of light spilling out from around the doorway to the master bedroom. And she opens that door to find Annie sprawled out on the bed with Judith Meyer's headstone propped up against the headboard. And I think there's a jack-o'-lantern on the
I
nightstand.
think so.
Yeah. Um, nice callback to that in Trick or Treat. Um, but yeah, she's absolutely spooked out by this and sort of backs up towards this closet door, and we get Bob swinging down his dead
Mhm.
body. I have no idea how
Like
he's
one of the cabinets opens and Linda's like stuffed up there, and
uh-huh like Amber Tamblyn in the Ring remake. Um
yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of mashed into a closet. Um and I want to say Linda's eyes are going in different directions or something.
Yep.
It's she's very much playing dead. But yeah, Laurie kind of pops out of the bedroom freaking out. She's crying, she's whimpering, and we get that wonderful shot of the darkened doorway
Hmm.
behind her, and then
Hmm.
Michael's white mask coming into frame. We haven't really talked about the mask and how it's this old Captain
William
Kirk
Shatner.
mask. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
molded from William Shatner's face and painted white, and it's kind of got this kind of red brown hair. It's so unsettling, uh, and
It's iconic.
yeah, well, now it certainly is. Absolutely. I don't know if Don Post had any involvement with that mask, but I mean, clearly he did with
I
the
don't think
masks
so.
in Halloween 3.
Oh,
Um, but
I'd have to look it up. I don't
yeah,
know
I
who
would
designed
too.
the Shatner mask.
Yeah, I'd just be really curious to know. Um,
Yeah.
because clearly he had involvement with the masks for Halloween 3,
Hmm.
the silver shamrock masks. But yeah, no, just curious. So yes, Michael pops up behind her, and she kind of goes to step away, and he reaches out with the knife and slashes her arm, and she kind of
Love
does
that
this pinwheel over the balusters
balcony.
there, and
Yeah.
stumbles down basically crashes down the stairs there.
Ow.
And yeah, this is one of the first moments where we see Michael try to move fairly quickly too, to
Hmm.
come around the stairs and try to come down them. He's actually moving pretty fast for Michael Myers.
And
But
we get that theme. Boom, boom,
yep,
boom,
yep.
boom, boom, boom. Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Carpenter knows what he's doing with that music for sure.
Well,
Um,
so that's the thing. Like the music is a last minute addition.
yeah.
He showed the film to a studio, and they didn't like the film. They're like, "This isn't scary at all. It had no music to it." And that's
Oh,
where Carpenter realized like how important music is to cinema, to creating that story.
yeah.
They're so hand in hand. I can't imagine not having the music for this movie.
Excuse me. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, because there's really not much of a soundtrack other than his score. You do get
Hmm.
Don't Fear the Reaper at some point, but
Yeah, yeah, in the car.
yeah, but honestly, not a lot of music. So yeah, that's perfect that he made that decision to
Yeah.
ultimately write this himself. Oh God, and we're all the better for it for sure. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, Laurie picks herself up and flees. Um, she's kind of screaming as she heads down the street and pounding on a couple of neighbors' doors. And you do see some lights flip on, but no
Hmm.
one's helping her. It's that's terrifying
It's
as well.
Halloween. It's Halloween. This is
Yeah,
clearly just a
that's
high schooler
fair.
playing tricks. So yeah.
I don't know, as aggressively as she's screaming and pounding on
Oh,
doors.
I completely agree. Yeah, I
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
agree. I'm
But
just
you
like, that's the only
absolutely
thing I can imagine.
understand, yeah, why it's happening the way it is too. And she just barely manages to get back into the Doyle house. I love how she's
He's
having
banging on
trouble
that door,
with the keys,
screaming
you
at
know.
Tommy.
Yeah. And she like drops the keys and of course goes, the
Mhm.
keys. But does manage to make it in and lock the door just in time. And of course, she picks up the phone and finds it to be dead because Michael knows what he's doing here. Come on, this isn't his first rodeo. Um, he has somehow cut the line already. He's managed to sneak into the house. You know, basically, as she's backing up to this couch and cowering in fear, he's rising up behind it. Laurie is very lucky that the house is dark because he swoops down with his knife and misses her, stabbing a couch cushion. And she grabs one of her, well, she had already been holding one of her knitting needles to use as a weapon, and she gets him really good in the neck with it. And he just collapses behind the couch. And she thinks, okay, we should be good. She goes upstairs to check on the kids. And unfortunately, Michael is not dead. Oh no. Because when she's getting the kids together to, you know, get them out of the house, of course, they look up and see Michael coming up the stairs and down the hall there. So she rushes them.
Boogeyman.
It's the boogeyman, you know it. So she rushes them back into the bedroom, slams the door shut, tells them to get into the closet and not to come out until she comes to get them. And she goes to the doors at the balcony, realizes that's not going to work, and she goes behind the louvered bifolds of the other closet and kind of hides in the corner there. And of course, here's Michael burst into the bedroom and then slowly approach and then start kind of tearing away at the closet doors. Now she's used like a belt or something like that to kind of tie up there's never
The
handles on
knobs.
the inside of a
Yeah.
bifold door, but there are in this instance
There
because it
are in
works
this.
for the plot. Yeah. But she ties them together so he can't just rip the doors open. And of course, louvered bifolds like that, the little louvers are all super cheap wood. They always are. And he starts smashing through there, and you know, like the cord with the light is going on and off, and there's coat hangers flying everywhere and shit. And of course, she grabs one of these coat hangers and fashions it into a weapon and stabs him up into the eye hole of the mask with it. And he falls back. And I think we even get one of those old spaghetti western style collapse sounds.
When she gets him in the eye, he's holding onto the knife. He drops it. So she
That's
picks it
true.
up and
Yes.
stabs him again. And that's when he falls over. But so that's one of the big things, because after that happens, what does Laurie do for the second time in the film? He exits the closet and drops the knife.
Yeah. Yeah, and she goes out to, you know, she gets Tommy and Lindsay out of the other closet, and she tells them to run down the street to the neighbors and call the police. And she sends them screaming, and of course, you know, she's just kind of like collapsed in the bedroom doorway and just kind of in her feels at this point. And the kids come just tearing out of the house screaming. And this is where Loomis sees them. This is how he knows where everything's going down. And, you know, he draws his gun and races at the house. And Laurie, again, totally distracted by everything that's happened and just, you know, devastated, does not realize that Michael is sitting up behind her. And he gets up and approaches. And of course, once again, as she's stepping away, he attacks, and they're, you know, kind of tussling with each other. And she manages to kind of force his mask up. And this is what stops him for the moment, because I don't know that he can really be the shape, so to speak, unless he is in something of full costume, because it really gives him pause. And it's another actor playing him at this point. It's not Nick Castle. I don't know why they couldn't just.
So they wanted Michael to look like an everyday guy. They didn't want him to look like a weirdo or something like stereotypical.
Okay.
They wanted him to look like that guy around the corner. They wanted him to look like almost angelic in nature. Tall, white, blonde, attractive.
Makes sense.
Because it goes back to Carpenter's thing of being like, this could happen anywhere, to anyone. There isn't a rhyme or reason as to why Michael's doing it. It's what he's doing. And that's what makes the movie as terrifying as it is.
Oh, absolutely it does. And of course, Michael kind of pushes her away and pauses to roll the mask back down. And this where Loomis gets the wonderful opportunity to completely unload his revolver into this guy. To the point where it forces Michael all the way through the bedroom and off that balcony onto the ground below. And I think that's where we get the, old school collapsing on the ground sound effect.
Yeah.
No Wilhelm screams, because Michael is a silent protagonist, or antagonist rather. But yes. And this is where we get Laurie saying something along the lines of, is he dead? And like, who? The boogeyman. And
she goes, was that the boogeyman?
Or was that the boogeyman? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Loomis is like,
replies as a matter of fact, it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course he looks back outside, and just like the scene from Laurie looking down into the laundry, now Michael's gone again.
So my last bit of trivia, is that right before they shot that for the film, Donald Pleasance went up to Carpenter, was like, so how do you want me to play this? He's like, there's two ways I can go. I can be like completely in the know. I expected this to happen. Or I can freak out and be like, oh my gosh, where is he? What happened? And Carpenter's response, because here's this esteemed actor, like, giving him notes. Carpenter doesn't know how to respond, so he's like, can you do both? And it's obvious which one they ended up going with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, looks outside one last time, and of course, Michael is gone. And we get the Halloween theme kicking in again. And all these shots from different scenes around the houses and around the town, and you get the breathing from behind the mask as it's all playing out, and credits. It's
all the shots are empty, so it's all the more unsettling. Like he could be anywhere. You don't know where he is.
Yup. Oh, it's so good. So good. Oh my God. But you're absolutely right about the score, with the bit that plays, the bum, 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 that little bit plays really well, just like the theme. It's
listening to the soundtrack. It's one thing to note, like, how long that track is. Like, it goes on long without changing, and so you're like, when is it going to change? Like, this is getting long. Like, something has to happen, but it just keeps going and hammering.
Yeah, and that's this film in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
It's, just all this build up, no payoff when you think there's going to be payoff, until, you're just slammed by this final 20 minutes or so. It's, So perfect. And, shout out to the actor who plays Sheriff Brackett. Shout out to the
Mhm.
actress that plays Nurse Chambers. The fact that they came back for some of these recent Halloween films was very cool. I'm glad they were still living. It's because, as small as those roles were, they're
They're
still
important.
they're important, they're well acted. It's it may be thought of as a little cheesy, that acting, but it works for this film. It's I can't think of uh, other than maybe Alien and really The Exorcist and Don't Look Now, maybe. I have a hard time thinking of many more perfect 1970s horror films.
Mhm.
It's just just absolute chef's kiss.
One of the films I've come around on in recent years, that's 70s. I want to say it's 75. Black Christmas.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
by the same
Yeah.
director as A Christmas Story,
hmm
if
It's
you can
really
believe it.
good.
Yes, it
Like, I
is.
watched it a few years back and I'm like, do I like this movie more than Halloween? I don't think so. Is it a better movie than Halloween? I don't know. Like, it's really well done. It's
Yes, it
another one
is.
to where the score isn't as memorable, but it's very befitting of the film and it
Mhm.
adds to the film. The cast, all really strong. They're all
Yeah.
very dynamic characters and they all have their own little story arcs. Shout out to Margot Kidder for
Yup.
being the drunk college friend. That
She's so
it's
much
just
fun in that movie. And then
she
what's her
is
butt who plays Juliet and Romeo and Juliet?
in Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
strong. Like it's again another very well. That one's a very progressive horror movie.
Oh yes.
It's really good. It's really good. Not to take away from what we just talked about, but yeah.
No, I love Black Christmas. It's a shame that the remakes have all just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're just not it.
Nope, they're not.
But
Not even close.
yeah, and you know what? I'm totally not even bringing up some great giallos like Deep Red and
Mm, of
Suspiria, and the '70s
course.
really had it going on. It's and
Yeah.
not to discount some wonderful films from the '80s, '90s, aughts, 2010s, and now, but just
Different vibe.
wow, horror had a certain vibe. Yep, and was really building to just something more than just a B movie. It
hmm
just it it was really, really coming into its own. So yeah,
What's really funny about like the eras of filmmaking, so since you brought up 70s, 80s, and 90s, go back and watch the Indiana Jones trilogy. They
yeah,
are the original trilogy is those decades. Raiders is so 70s. From the lighting to the acting to the story, the plotting, like it's so very much in the 70s. And then Temple of
even
Doom
though
comes
it was
out,
an
and
'80s
it's
film,
so over
still.
the top, so 80s. And then you get to Last Crusade, which is just on the cusp of 90s, and
Yeah.
it's brighter. It's brighter
Yeah.
than Raiders of the Lost Ark. It feels like a 90s film. It's very interesting. It was brought up to my attention recently how much that is the case. And yeah, going
And it
into
all
rewatching those, it's
ended
like,
there.
wow, yep, and everything was great.
Which is funny because the most recent one is just, it's not bad. It's actually rather good. It's just
Haven't seen it yet.
so unnecessary and just didn't need it. Didn't need
Yeah,
it.
well,
But you'll get to
it's
it
a bummer
eventually.
because like you see Harrison Ford like really loved the role and really
Oh,
loved
yeah.
this movie. So
Yeah. And like I said, it's not that bad. It's actually rather
yeah,
good. But we're beyond the time of Indiana Jones being a relevant thing, unfortunately, which
yeah,
kind of
hey,
makes me worried about the video game, but we'll see.
yeah.
Um, but
Hard to
yeah,
sell Pulp Fiction these days.
I suppose. Matt, any final thoughts about our wonderful movie here, Halloween '78?
I mean, you're mentioned as we were talking about it and going through, like, there's this iconic scene and this iconic scene and this iconic scene. There's the scene that everyone memes with the clothesline. Like, there is so much about this film that is iconic. Like, there's no wonder why it led into this expansive genre of slashers and things along the lines of, like, Terminator owes in part to
Oh, yeah.
what Carpenter did here. You have Fatal Attraction. Like, you have things outside of the horror genre that wouldn't exist without Carpenter's Halloween. Yeah, you have a Black Christmas that came first, but that's not in the same. There was no stalking in the way that was here. There was
that
no
was a little bit more
of,
pure slasher, actually.
that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, this has a level of obsessiveness with Michael's portrayal of following Tommy, following the girls, obsessing over his sister with the headstone, and there's the traps that he laid. There's so much about this film that is like lightning in a bottle.
Oh, yeah.
They've tried to replicate it with Halloween 2. They've tried with H2O. They tried with the zombie films, which is a discussion for another time. Like, they've tried to go back with the formula, and it's not that it doesn't work. I just feel like people missed the mark with what did and didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to straight up remake it, but yeah, I think people have kind of learned some of the wrong lessons out of it, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, right on the money with calling this lightning in a bottle. It is perfection in slasher / thriller form. It's something. It is quintessential John Carpenter. I know recently people have been talking about his comments, how he just wants to play video games and, just kind of hang out and watch basketball. And, that's all he really wants to do. And good for him. Because that man has earned it. But,
of course.
There are lesser known films of his that I think we'll look back on at some point with a little bit more fondness. Looking at you, Prince of Darkness, but ultimately, yeah, there's a reason why they call him the Horror Master. And even though that's a nickname he would like to leave behind at this point, but yeah, man, it's the dude is a master, and this film absolutely proves it. So yeah, I really appreciate you wanting to bring this one to the table. This is, I think, one of those that we talked about originally doing. And, I think I may have pushed back with like, okay, well, yeah, it's like your favorite horror movie, but maybe we'll save that a little bit and let's just do a favorite. And then of course, everything went to hell with the Zodiac episode. So, again, a shame. Speaking of lighting in a bottle, because I had such a great conversation with you, and then hardly any of it was like usable. So yeah, again, apologies there, but things are working so much better these days. Thank God. But yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this one on, especially this time of year. I'm glad, so glad that we were able to work this out for this. Because as people are watching / listening to this, it should be Halloween. So, happy Halloween, everyone. Matt, if you'd like, where can people find you?
The Right Hidalgo on everything except for Instagram. That's private, but everything else, The Right Hidalgo.
All right. And yes, this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode, but until next time, stay spooky.
Before we go.
Before we go.
Happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy Halloween, Silver
Shamrock. Yes. Happy Halloween, everybody. Stay spoopy.